Reputable ITK journalists from David Ornstein to Alistair Gold are suggesting that Tottenham's moves to strengthen their wilting squad have heated up over the past 24 hours or so. Meanwhile, and perhaps not surprisingly, Manchester United are also scouring the market in an attempt to get themselves out of 13th place in the Premier League. And Brighton's Evan Ferguson's availability is interesting many big clubs who are looking for an old-fashioned number 9, including apparently that lot from South London. And of course, a transfer window wouldn't be a transfer window without conflicting reports on Cristiano Ronaldo's future. Could he be going to PSG to try and better Messi's glory? All this and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League Transfer News with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for watching and for all your support. Please do give this video a like. I want to get it seen by as many people as possible. And if you like Daily Premier League Transfer News this January, please do press that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 15,000 subscribers. Getting there closer and closer. All of your support is really appreciated. But let's start, of course, with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. And Antony Patterson, the Sunderland young goalkeeper, is close to signing with Tottenham, according to reports today. The deal's at advanced stages. Personal terms have been agreed, as ever in the current modern-day climate of football. They get the personal terms agreed before the clubs finally. The very last stage is that after all the agents have dealt with the personal terms and everything to do with the club and the player, then the two clubs will speak directly. So it looks like Sunderland's Antony Patterson is the young goalkeeper that Tottenham are going to go to as their new reserve to Vicario, potentially pushing Fraser Forster down to that third place. For me, that is the correct way to go. I'll talk in a little bit about some of the reports coming out yesterday that Spurs were going for Sam Johnstone, England's squad goalkeeper, and of course a Premier League proven player. But I think the reality of Vicario being Spurs' number 1 and needing some kind of competition from a younger, hungry, upcoming keeper is where Tottenham need to go next. But let me know what you think in the comments. Any Spurs fans watching, is that the way you think Tottenham should go? Or do you think Tottenham should go with a Sam Johnstone, or should maybe even go for a bigger name goalkeeper, someone to really challenge Vicario for that number 1 slot? I know a lot of Spurs fans go back to what happened with Liverpool under Klopp when they needed a keeper to replace Karius, and they went big, didn't they, on Alisson, the best keeper in the world. I don't personally think Tottenham are in a situation where they're going to do that. I don't think Daniel Levy is going to open the purse strings for wages and funds to go and get the best of the best. So somebody young and hungry and up and coming who wants to grow into a Premier League number 1 is the way to go. Meanwhile, other transfer talk. Tottenham, Leicester and Bayer Leverkusen are all racing to sign Udinese defender Thomas Christiansen, 22 years old, valued at £16.5 million by the Serie A club. And of course, Spurs have had success buying from Udinese recently with Destiny Udogie. Fabio Paratici, as I spoke about in yesterday's video, still consulting for Spurs, still clearly using his contacts in Serie A to try and get young, hungry talent through the door. Christensen is set to be called up by the Danish senior squad from their under-21s, indicating his rise and his improvement. That is according to Sky Sports. So look out for that one. Thomas Christensen, as we've known throughout the last few months, Tottenham looking to add to their defensive stock, ideally players who can play centre-back and full-back as well, and Christensen seems to fit the bill. Another full-back, though, that Spurs are interested in, and this one could well have some truth in it, because as we know, Tottenham love to scour the market for players in the last 6 months of their contract or whose contracts are expiring, either in the summer or the summer afterwards. And apparently Spurs are huge admirers of Nottingham Forest defender Ola Aina. The fullback's in the last year of his contract, and Spurs would love to add him to their backline. Forest, of course, currently in second place in the Premier League under Nuno Espirito Santo. I'm laughing a little bit because Nuno, bless him, he didn't seem to have what it took to manage the big club when he came to Spurs. But when it comes to kind of middle-range clubs who he can play that deep block, counter-attacking football with pace with, it's really working for him at Nottingham Forest the same way it did when he started at Wolves. When he first got Wolves into the Premier League, they were so difficult to handle. I remember them coming to Spurs when Spurs were playing at Wembley, turning us over there. Forest doing similar things. It'll be interesting to see how far they can get this kind of run of form this season. So it'll be interesting to see whether Spurs go for an Aina. They've been interested in basically the majority of Nottingham Forest players recently. They took Brennan Johnson. They've been interested in Murillo. Now Aina, Morgan Gibbs-White as well. So they're really looking at Forest players, but Forest's owner, who I think he just this week, in fact, changed some debt into shares. So he's a smart dude. And also, of course, he appointed Edu, Arsenal's sporting director, who did such an amazing job turning Arsenal's fortunes around. He's appointed Edu as kind of the overall head of sporting direction for all of his clubs, the Nottingham Forest owner. So things happening over at Forest there. As I mentioned earlier, lots of reports yesterday about Sam Johnson, who's been allowed to leave Wolves this month. He's currently reserve goalkeeper for Wolves. Paul O'Keefe said that Sam Johnson was emerging as a strong candidate for Spurs as they search for a goalkeeper as backup for Vicario, and is one of the leading contenders. It remained to be seen, according to Ryan Taylor yesterday, who I think works for the Mail. It said it remained to be seen whether he'd be willing to join Spurs from Wolves as backup. However, Alistair Gold last night gave an update saying that Johnson was on the list for Spurs, and he was even indeed when they signed Fraser Forster as backup, but it's not going to go any further than that, which is why I think realistically the Anthony Patterson talk from Sunderland is a lot more likely at this stage. Meanwhile, Fluminense in Brazil are very keen to get Richarlison in on loan from Spurs. Tottenham are adamant that they don't want to sell the striker this month and that Ange Postecoglou is counting on him until the end of the season. But these links with Fluminense back in Brazil are not going away. We do know that Richarlison, who suffered from so many injuries, is absolutely desperate to get his way back into the Brazilian national team. He was, of course, the number 9 for Brazil starting at the last World Cup. But because he cannot get on the pitch for Spurs, I think not only is he frustrated with that, but Tottenham and Big Ange Postecoglou are very frustrated with his inability to provide any competition this season and a lot of last season and the season before for our strikers. And Dominic Solanke, this week actually, is the first week Dominic Solanke has had off for ages because Tottenham have been playing 2 games a week. So hopefully Solanke will be able to be at absolutely full metal against Newcastle this weekend. But I think Richarlison is on his last legs at Spurs unless he can put together a huge second half of this season, really offer options in terms of the left forward role as well as the centre forward role at Spurs. Then I can see the summer leading to him leaving. But I cannot imagine Tottenham letting him go to Fluminense this January window, unless of course they found someone to replace him. Meanwhile, Girona apparently seriously considering triggering the purchase option of 15 million euros for Bryan Gil, who's been doing really well for them on loan from Spurs. Girona has Gil in a really good place. He's playing excellently for them, regular football, and 15 million euros for a player who is doing so well over in La Liga is a bit of a steal. For me, the same thing accounts for Gil now as it did when he joined. I worried about his lack of physicality, his inability to be strong enough in the Premier League, and he's clearly a technically excellent player. Decision making is good deliverer of a cross, great passer. Just remember what he did in that game at the Etihad, I think it was last season when we drew 3-3, breaking away from our own box and found a beautiful pass out wide. Gil has got what it takes, but he just doesn't have the physicality for the Premier League. So a move back full-time on a permanent deal to Spain would suit all parties, I think. Some other news which is relevant to Spurs. Fabrizio Romano said yesterday that Manchester City have added Lens centre-back Abdulkadir Kuzanov, easy for me to say, Abdulkadir Kuzanov to their list this January. And that's relevant to Spurs because he is one of the top names on Tottenham's list. Kuzanov has been someone that Spurs have been really keen on, and the 20-year-old centre-back is interesting several top clubs, and Manchester City have jumped right to the top of that list. Obviously, they are down in 6th place in the Premier League, having their worst season under Pep Guardiola by a stretch, and they feel like they need new young talent in their centre-back role. You've got to think that if City are coming in for Kuzanov, then that will blow Tottenham Hotspur out of the water completely. Another name that has been on Spurs' list has been Takefusa Kubo, and the Japanese international is now interesting Arsenal as well. The South London club looking for options and opportunities in this January window. Mikel Arteta has said he's not going to do any deal for just anyone, but if something comes up, that is a possibility. The thing for me about these names, Kubo and Kuzanov, for me shows how small the waters are that clubs are swimming in when it comes to trying to get players in this January. It was similar last January, wasn't it? With Dragoshin interesting both Bayern Munich and Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham in the end managing to get him over the line, which thank God we did, because even though By no means is Dragoshin the finished article, especially in terms of the ball at his feet, but the amount of injuries that Spurs have had to their centre-halves this season, if we didn't have Dragoshin, we'd be completely ruined at this stage. And it looks like Arsenal potentially looking to gazump all of the clubs that have had Kubo on their list this January as well. Okay, guys, before I go into some more wide-ranging Premier League transfer news, once again, thank you so much for your support. Please do give this video a like if you haven't already. The more likes we get, it gets into more people's suggested videos, and those who want to see daily Premier League transfer news can watch this. Also, please do subscribe to the channel. You can just click on the little illustrated picture of me in the bottom right-hand corner, and if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get daily Premier League transfer news both in January and during the summer, and then always, of course, starting with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur, for whom I do watch-alongs and other regular content. Also, you can support me by becoming a member. That costs only £1 a month and really helps support me to make this daily content for you. All the details of how are on the links in the description box below. But let's get over to Old Trafford. And as I mentioned in the opening, Manchester United, who are, frankly, I've said this a few times, but I think saving Ange Postecoglou at the moment. They made their managerial change, sacking Erik ten Hag and bringing in Ruben Amorim, who's the most kind of sought-after coach in Europe, and he has not been able to get a managerial bounce at all. Man United now, with one of the highest wage bills in world football, in 13th place in the Premier League. The next game is away at Anfield. They are struggling in a huge way, and as a result, they are scouring the market to try and get players in who will more suit Ruben Amorim's style of play. But they need to get rid of players first, and of course, top of that list is Marcus Rashford, who has apparently rejected 3 offers from the Saudi Pro League worth up to £35 million a year. Apparently, Rashford wants to join a club and a league that gives him a chance of winning back his place in the England squad. Guys, let me know in the comments, who do you support and would you take Rashford? If you're a Spurs fan like I am, would you take Marcus Rashford? Do you think he is the right player to come in that left-sided forward role and take some minutes off Son Heung-min, allow him to get fit and properly back on form? And also Rashford, of course, can play in the 9. Rashford apparently favours a move to Barcelona. Good luck, mate. Although the club's financial situation would make a deal difficult to complete. Of course it would make it difficult to complete, because Barcelona currently can't even register Dani Olmo, who is already at their club. That's how bad Barcelona's financial situation is. Other clubs interested in Rashford at the moment, Borussia Dortmund and Paris Saint-Germain. For me, I know this might seem a little left field, but if I was Marcus Rashford, I would seriously look at Borussia Dortmund. They would make him their main man, I think. Obviously, they've got Gittins, who plays in that position as well, but he's interesting other clubs around Europe. And maybe if Borussia Dortmund took a lot of money for Jamie Gittins, then they could get Rashford in on a loan with a purchase option. And he needs to go somewhere where he can be the main man, Marcus Rashford. Meanwhile, Man United are looking to sanction loan deals away from the club to get wages off their hands to then free up funds for their £80 million pursuit for Swedish and Sporting striker Victor Gyökeres. Also, Man United could activate the £25 million buyback clause in the contract of 21-year-old Benfica and Spanish wing-back Alvaro Carreras, who they sold back in May. However, another rumour regarding Marcus Rashford, who's currently basically been used as a make-weight for potential moves for strikers to come into the squad, as apparently Manchester United are currently trying to use him to tempt Napoli into a swap deal for 26-year-old Nigerian striker Victor Osimhen, who's currently ripping it up on loan at Galatasaray. Meanwhile, some contract news from Old Trafford. They are apparently United reluctant to trigger the 12-month extension on Harry Maguire's £200,000 a week wages, but are instead in talks with Maguire to try and give him a new deal worth less money. What a place that would be for Harry Maguire to be in. They've basically been trying to sell him for the last 3-4 years, haven't they? And finally, they've got a manager in Ruben Amorim who plays a back 3, which Harry Maguire is best suited for. I've been saying that since he made his breakthrough into the England team under Gareth Southgate. He is so well suited to a back 3, but not really quick enough and agile enough and pacey enough on the turn to work in a back 4 successfully. So I could see why Harry Maguire might even be willing to take a pay cut to stay at Manchester United under Ruben Amorim. But if Amorim doesn't improve what he's doing in the next season or so, then how long will he realistically last at Old Trafford? It is a it is a basket case of a club over there at Old Trafford at the moment. United also looking to offload Brazilian winger Antony, who they paid £80 million for from Ajax. An absolute joke. If you haven't heard this story about how it came that Antony came to Manchester United, Manchester United put in a bid early in the summer that they bought Antony, that Ajax rejected, but Ajax would have accepted, I think, maybe £5 or £10 million more, and that first bid was something like £35 or £40 million. And then what happened was Ajax offloaded a couple of other players, and therefore they no longer needed to sell any more of their players. And as United got more and more desperate over that summer, they kept on upping their bid for Antony, and Ajax were just like, no. And in the end, they said it would take a bid of £80 million, which would be over double what we were initially willing to accept. And Man United went for it. And my God, up there with Nicola Pepe and Tanguy and Ndombele for the London clubs in terms of their worst signings, Antony has to be one of the worst signings in the history of the Premier League at £80 million. And Man United are looking to offload him now, with Real Betis showing interest in a loan move for him. He needs to go somewhere and show what he can do. Because he really cannot hack it in the Premier League. Meanwhile, over to Man City, England defender Kyle Walker, now 34 years old, wanted by Saudi Arabian trio Al Nasser, Al Ahly and Al Ittihad. Of course, Walker not really beloved anymore by Manchester City fans. I see so much stick going Kyle Walker's way that maybe a move abroad in terms of both getting some popularity back and some belief in his career, but also he's got a lot of family issues, hasn't he, Kyle Walker? So maybe that's something that could make sense, probably more realistically in the summer than January, but who knows. Some big talks, big news coming out yesterday from Aston Villa on Sky Sports News. They've opened talks with Borussia Dortmund to sign Donyell Malen. According to Sky in Germany, they're demanding Dortmund are demanding £16.6 million plus bonuses, and the Bundesliga club have rejected an initial Villa offer of £13.3 million plus bonuses, but are ready to sell. Aston Villa, one of those clubs, of course, who have to be a little bit careful with profit and sustainability rules, despite the fact they're in the Champions League, just because of how quickly they've grown and how their revenue hasn't really caught that up. Over to that news that I spoke about in the opening there, West Ham are currently making moves towards trying to sign Evan Ferguson from Brighton. Contact has been made with Brighton over the Irish striker. However, South London club Arsenal are eyeing a deal for Ferguson too, but are facing competition not only from West Ham but Fulham as well. If you're Evan Ferguson, something has clearly happened there with Brighton, hasn't it? Because he's not been playing for them. He's not been starting for them for quite a while. And he was one of the most sought-after number 9s in Britain just maybe 18 months ago. But now, would you go to Arsenal, or would you go to a club more like West Ham or Fulham, where maybe you would be the first name on the team sheet and get a chance to start every week? You can't see him starting every week for Arsenal, seeing as they have Kai Havertz, who they like to play in a false 9, and Gabriel Jesus. So let me know in the comments what you think you would do if you were Evan Ferguson. And also, depending on which club you support, would you take Evan Ferguson at your club? He's a bit of a brute, but he's been overtaken in terms of exciting young British number 9s by Liam Delap. And Liam Delap at Ipswich is really ripping it up, and he's a player that I could see big clubs coming back in for. And of course, Manchester City have a buyback clause on them. Sticking at South London's Arsenal, Atletico Bilbao forward and the star, one of the 2 stars of the Euros, Nico Williams, still only 22 years old, target for Arsenal, and the Premier League club could trigger a £48 million release clause that Nico Williams has. I think Williams is going to have his absolute choice of which club he goes to next from Bilbao. And for me, it's probably more likely that he would go in the summer rather than January, because those release clauses tend to only count in the summer windows. Big talk today that Kieran Tierney is likely to return to Celtic from Arsenal. Discussions currently taking place for the 27-year-old fullback. He has been unlucky with injuries. I really rated him actually when he first came down south, but he's not really anywhere near the pecking order at Arsenal anymore. So a move back to Celtic would seem to make place for him. Over to Bournemouth, Real Madrid are watching their Dutch centre-back Dean Huijsen, 19 years old. He was on Tottenham's list all summer and for the last 18 months or so, but it looks like Spurs have unfortunately missed the boat with that player because he has gone straight to Bournemouth in the team, scored against Tottenham, doing really well, a ball player, good in the air, Huge amounts of potential, and Real Madrid now looking at him as a potential next centre-half for them. Over to Everton. Both Ipswich and Everton are eyeing a loan move for Aston Villa's English winger Jayden Philogene. He's 22 years old. He joined back to Villa from Hull in the summer, but hasn't really been getting much game time. So Ipswich and Everton looking at him as a potential option. And then finally, as I mentioned in the opening, Paris Saint-Germain sources currently playing down reports that Cristiano Ronaldo could come back to Europe with PSG. Fabrizio Romano says Paris Saint-Germain are not in talks to sign Ronaldo, despite some of those initial rumours. However, there tends to be no smoke without fire. And like I said yesterday, it would not surprise me at all if Cristiano Ronaldo fancied one more crack back in Europe. It didn't work out for him at Old Trafford. Manchester United didn't use him well enough, and a lot of the fans and a lot of the pundits thought that maybe his ego was too big at Manchester United, and therefore he wasn't allowing young players to express themselves because he was just insisting that they passed it to him every single time. Of course, he scored a hat-trick at Old Trafford. Probably his best performance for Manchester United was against Spurs at Old Trafford, where he scored a hat-trick against us a couple of years ago. But where do you think Cristiano Ronaldo will end up next? Do you think he'll end his career in Saudi Arabia? Will he go over to the MLS? I think he fancies one more go at trying to kind of better Lionel Messi's legacy. I think that's what his career is all about now. And of course, Lionel Messi, having won the World Cup for Argentina, has really jumped ahead in terms of who is the best player in the history of the game. But Ronaldo will be looking for some way, if possible, to get back ahead in the pecking order, certainly in terms of his own mind. Anyway, guys, that's the end of today's daily Premier League transfer news. Thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Press subscribe. As I said, I'm trying to get to 15,000 subscribers, getting closer and closer. You can help me get there for, if you like, daily Premier League transfer content over this January and in the summer. And of course, I bring you all the Tottenham Hotspur news as well, because they are my club. And you can listen to this every day on the audio platforms too, be that Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in the Spurred On podcast and give me a subscribe and a follow there. Guys, with Premier League games coming up tomorrow, Tottenham at home to Newcastle in the 12:30 early game. Have a good Friday night. Cheers for watching.